While the ratings downgrade came as a shock, it wasn't necessarily a surprise. The economy has been on a slippery slope for some time now. The Finance Ministry has undergone 4 reshuffles in less than 18 months, each time denting business and investor confidence.
So the changes that were made at the Treasury, to be more specific, has made it less clear how the authorities will now moderate debt levels, stick to the expenditure ceiling, and also how growth will be sustained going forward. In their argument, Standard & Poor's said all these changes are going to be growth destructing.
The impact of the downgrade will be severe. Government debt currently stands at almost 51% of GDP at $169 billion. Servicing this debt is going to get a lot more expensive.
The cost of borrowing goes up. The willingness of investors or lenders to lend to the South African government diminishes substantially, to the point that some pension and provident funds are not allowed to lend to an entity that is junk status.
Ordinary South Africans will also start to feel the pain.
Rising inflation, the weakening of the currency is going to have a definite impact on the cost of fuel and the cost of food. It's also going to have an impact on government's ability to fund social spending.
Ratings agency Moody's has placed South Africa under review and says it will make a decision in terms of a downgrade in the next 30 to 90 days. It does provide a bit of breathing space. However, most economists believe further downgrades are inevitable in light of the political developments.
Investors, be it local or international, do not like uncertainty. They cannot make decisions. Therefore, all those industrialization measures that we have so carefully put together, at the moment, they need to be put on ice until we sort out our political crisis first.
The country's largest trade union, COSATU, has called on the president to step down. It follows a similar call from the SACP. Sumitra Nydoo, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now, certainly a lot of damage has taken place to South Africa's economy, but let's get a sense of the way forward. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sikonathi. He's a deputy editor at Financial Mail. You're very welcome to the show, Sikonathi. Now, of course, the S&P said its decision was based on President Zuma's cabinet reshuffle, which, of course, it says put policy continuity in the country at risk looking forward. What are your thoughts on his new cabinet, particularly on Malusi Gigaba, the new finance minister, and certainly his plan for the economy?
Malusi Gigaba is the only senior minister in that new cabinet, or so in the group of ministers that have been brought in. But unfortunately for him, and indeed for Jacob Zuma, he is not senior enough, and he does not enjoy the credibility and support that the financial markets would need. He's been through 2 ministries before, and he has left behind in his wake a collapsing Eskom, which is the electricity provider. He has left behind quite a lot of governance missteps that leave a lot to be desired. And certainly all of that, including the many allegations of corruption involving the Gupta family, who are friends of the president, and indeed Malusi Gigaba himself. The shenanigans they have been involved with in the state companies, that is the arms manufacturer Denel, Eskom, the electricity supplier, and the railways logistics company Transnet, they leave a lot to be desired. They actually tarnish his image if anyone has to consider those closely.
We certainly saw a knee-jerk reaction to this move across.
Does.
Go ahead, Sikonathi.
Yeah, he definitely is not the person to be at the head of any ministry, let alone the finance ministry in South Africa or anywhere else for that matter.
Really? Well, we certainly saw a knee-jerk reaction to President Zuma's move across markets. But certainly what's at stake in the longer term for South Africa's markets and for the country's economy?
As a start, the banking stocks and the market in general has lost at least 140 billion rands in the last 3 days on market valuations. That's about 12 billion US dollars if you think about it, and that is because of this irrational decision by Jacob Zuma. So what now, as S&P has stated, and indeed Moody's itself, this whole action of the president leaves an impression that there's no policy, there's no continuity, there's certainly no accountability. The president just wakes up today and decides to fire that minister and that one, indeed using his constitutional prerogative and powers that he does not have to explain himself to anyone. But that is now being abused clearly. Those powers are being abused. And what now we have here is the African National Congress, the ruling party, disagreeing publicly with its leader, with its president, Jacob Zuma, saying we did not agree on these appointments. It seems these appointments were discussed elsewhere and you're just bringing them to us to legitimize, which we are refusing to do. As I'm speaking to you right now, they are still locked in negotiations with Jacob Zuma at the headquarters of the ruling party in Johannesburg. The allies of the of this ruling party, the Communist Party, and indeed the Workers' Trade Union, have called on Jacob Zuma to step down, and they have gone further and asked the members of parliament, ANC members themselves, to pass a motion of no confidence in parliament, which by a simple majority would then recall Jacob Zuma from the presidency, and he would have to resign. That is what they are working on. And the opposition parties on the other side are trying two ways. They're also pushing for a motion of no confidence in parliament, and they are approaching the courts requesting the impeachment of the president. That is where we are now. But clearly the president is fast losing support with his own
Let me ask you a little bit more about this vote of no confidence. We know this isn't the first time. Will this time be any different from the previous unsuccessful attempt to pass a vote of no confidence in President Zuma at Parliament before?
Uche, the difference now is that the African National Congress itself is unhappy with him, and it says it's considering this motion of no confidence. The opposition on its own cannot pass any motion of confidence, but the ANC, his own party, can, and you just need 50 members of that party to vote with the opposition, and the motion passes. So it depends on the Democratic Alliance and the Economic Freedom Front to convince sufficient numbers of the ANC's own members of parliament, including those former cabinet ministers that were dismissed last week by the president. And as we know, Pravin Gordhan, the former finance minister, has already said he will be led by his conscience in voting in a motion of no confidence. He will not necessarily take the instruction of the party on how to vote, which has been the case prior to this. So the ground seems to be shifting a bit.
Okay. Well, many thanks for those insights, Sikonathi. Of course, Sikonathi Mantshatsa, he's a deputy editor at Financial Mail.